On Tech News Today, some in Congress want a new net neutrality law, but others in Congress will probably kill it. We'll tell you why. Plus, Facebook launches another Snapchat killer, but with a fatal flaw. Microsoft rolls out a half-hearted home automation initiative, and find out why BlackBerry users are getting a lot more apps. All that and more coming up right now on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, June 18th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by Citrix ShareFile. Enhance your workflow. Send files of almost any size easily and securely with Citrix ShareFile. Try ShareFile today. For a 30-day free trial, go to sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter TNT. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgan.
I'm Sarah Silbert.
Jason Howell is off this week, and Anthony Nielsen is filling in for Jason. Tech News Today explores the big stories of the day with some of the world's best journalists. Sarah Silbert, are you excited? Can you feel the excitement coming out of Seattle, Washington today?
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm very excited for this event. We're going to see and know an Amazon smartphone by the end of the day. So that's pretty awesome. That's a whole new world for Amazon to enter. We'll
see how smart it is. It's supposed to have a 3D screen. So far, all the 3D screen smartphones have been horrible failures in the market. I suspect that Amazon has something up its sleeve to go with the display, with the hardware, probably some really cool way to navigate their catalogs, probably some way to engage with 3D content. Who knows? But we've also heard reports that there could be three-dimensional sort of menus that you can see if you tilt the phone in a certain way. Right. Sounds pretty gimmicky to me. Do you think there's anything else they might announce today?
People have said we might see new Kindle Fires and other devices. I think another interesting thing we might see in the phone is the Dash barcode scanner could be built in. So Amazon announced that a few months ago, and there isn't a lot of a reason for you to want to get a separate device for that. So if that's built into the phone, might have more customers using that.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer that Amazon would come out with a showrooming piece of hardware which enables you to go into Best Buy, find the perfect product, and then buy it on Amazon, and then walk out of the store, leaving Best Buy with nothing except a scanned product. So that would make a lot of sense if they had a barcode scanner and possibly some other recognition stuff like Google Goggles or something like that, where you can recognize products just with a camera or something like that. So yes, we'll see what's happening with that. Of course, we're going to be covering it live here at 10 a.m. Pacific. I'm sorry, 10:15 a.m. Pacific. Leo and me, and possibly some other folks on Skype. So tune in at 10:15 a.m. Pacific for our special coverage of the Amazon event. So Sarah Silbert, why don't we just jump right into the news and see what happens? All right. Well, Democrats. All right. And Democrats in both houses of Congress introduced bills to ban paid prioritization. Jason Koebler writes for Vice, and he's here with us to explain this turn of events. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're glad you're here.
Sorry. I think the best way to start off would be to explain what paid prioritization is, Jason.
Right. So paid prioritization is this idea of creating an internet fast lane. Basically, it's not exactly what we've seen with Netflix and Comcast deal to basically deliver faster streaming speeds, but it's kind of like that. Basically, it allows ISPs to charge content providers to send their content to users much faster than the other. Say YouTube could be delivered faster than Vimeo, Netflix could be delivered faster than Hulu Plus, depending on who is paying the ISPs on that end. And people are worried that would kind of just destroy the level playing field that the internet has right now.
Now, it's important to note that paid prioritization affects the connection between the edge provider, the Netflix and the YouTubes of the world, and the ISP. It does not affect the connection between the ISP and your house, essentially what they call the last mile. A paid prioritization doesn't sound like a horrible thing to me. At least it doesn't sound as horrible as arrangements that ISPs can have to receive money to get priority over the last mile. there are some edge providers like Netflix and YouTube, which just hammer the internet with traffic, especially during peak hours in the United States. And then there are others that hardly trickle out any content at all. It makes some amount of sense for companies to do different things like paid prioritization, like co-hosting their servers within the ISP's data center. Is this really? Do you really think this is a net neutrality issue, or is this just something similar to net neutrality?
Right. I think it is a net neutrality issue, kind of when you get down to it. It's not necessarily exactly the same thing because we're not talking about that last mile, but it's what you mentioned is kind of one of the main arguments for this. You have users who are essentially streaming tons of Netflix content or tons of high definition video, and basically the users who aren't doing that are forced to pay for it on the other end because, the way things work right now, all of that content is considered the exact same by the ISPs, or at least it was until the January decision in the Court of Appeals that kind of struck that down. So that's the argument that Republicans and people who kind of are on, for lack of a better term, the ISP side say, makes the most sense to go about.
Now, this thing isn't going to pass, is it? I mean, there are Democrats in Congress who want this. The sponsors of the bill are Patrick Leahy, who's a Democrat from Vermont, and Doris Matsui, who's a representative. She's a California Democrat. They're in favor, not a single co-sponsor on the Republican side, and there's, the consensus is that the Republicans in the House are going to kill this thing. Why are they going to kill it? What is the Republicans' beef with this particular bill exactly?
Right now, it's just kind of the party line of, the government should not interfere in big business, and it doesn't go much further than that. I mean, you have kind of all the big names opposing any sort of further regulation by the FCC. You have, Ted Cruz, you have John Boehner and Eric Cantor all on the record as saying they don't support any sort of further regulation that the FCC could do. So there's no real chance that this goes anywhere. At best, maybe in the Senate they can force a vote and get some people on the record on this issue that haven't been on it before. But right now, it's just it's something just that Leahy and Matsui can say they tried, basically.
Right. Even if the bill doesn't pass, do you think, obviously net neutrality, that issue isn't going away. So will this have any effect on Tom Wheeler and the FCC?
I think this bill at least sends the message that Democrats in the House and in Congress care very much about this issue, and people care about the issue, which we've seen from the John Oliver skit and the comments and some of the hearings. But kind of the more push there is behind this, the more kind of get the ball rolling for some sort of intervention in the future if the FCC decides it wants to kind of keep the internet the way it has been for the last decade or so.
Well, Jason Koebler, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today. It's an interesting story. It's a bill that will probably never become a law, but it's interesting that somebody in Congress is listening to somebody in the public and trying to do something about net neutrality and the coming problem that we're having with increasingly slow connection, increasingly high bandwidth, and how do we make sure that it's an even playing field for startups and everybody else. Thanks again, Jason Koebler, for coming on Tech News Today.
Right. Thanks for having me.
You can find Jason at Vice.com and also on Twitter at Jason_Koebler. Koebler spelled K-O-E-B-L-E-R. Well, just a sec, we're going to tell you about Facebook's latest app. But first, I want to tell you about Citrix ShareFile. If you put attachments to email, you are taking big risks, and I hope you're not doing that with sensitive files or files that are very large, because in many cases, they'll either, in the one case, they'll get into the wrong hands, and in the other case, they may not get into the hands of the people you intended them to get. So I recommend Citrix ShareFile to everybody I talk to who ask me about sending files over the internet. Citrix ShareFile is fantastic because instead of sending an attachment over the internet, which is, again, a lousy idea, you actually upload the file securely to the cloud and send a secure link. And that gives you all kinds of control and awareness about what happens with your file. For starters, you can tell it to only allow 1 download or 5 downloads, or only allow it to be downloaded for a week, and specifically for specific people. When they download it, you can tell ShareFile to alert you that it's been downloaded, and that gives you a lot of information and control about when your file is downloaded, who downloaded it, and so on. It syncs automatically, so you and your team at work can always have the most updated materials. It's a terrible idea if you're going to be sending an attachment around and you send it to 20 people. You're creating 20 copies of that document. When it's updated, you can't be sure who has the updated copy and who doesn't. With ShareFile, all of those problems are completely erased because there's one version of the file in the cloud and it's synchronized automatically. And you can access ShareFile from anywhere. So any laptop, any tablet, any smartphone, you can use it on the go. You know, some people use it for the security aspects. Other people use it for the file size aspects. You can send multi-gigabyte size files straight into corporate, right past corporate firewalls. It's really fantastic. But I use it for all attachments because attaching an attachment to email is just a terrible, antiquated idea. It's not the 90s anymore. You can't get away with that kind of thing. You have to upload it to the cloud and send a secure link. I want you to try ShareFile with our special offer. Sign up today, and you'll get a 30-day free trial. No obligation at all. Go to sharefile.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and enter TNT. Remember, go to sharefile.com and type in TNT. Well, Sarah, Facebook's got yet another app. What are they up to this time?
Right. So yesterday, Facebook announced a photo sharing app called Slingshot. It competes with the likes of Snapchat, but unlike other ephemeral apps, you'll only be able to view your friends' photos and video after you send something yourself. So we have Ellis Hamburger, a reporter from The Verge, to tell us more about this. Thank you for joining us, Ellis.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, Facebook says Slingshot is not a Snapchat clone. Do you agree?
No, it definitely is. I mean, if you look at the interface straight up, the first thing you do when you open the app is see a camera screen, just like Snapchat. You see a big circular button to take a shot. You can add white text, which is almost the exact same font as in Snapchat. And you can even do some art on there. The only difference there is that you have different brush sizes. The sending flow is a straight-up clone of Snapchat, and they, to some degree, admit that Snapchat was an influence, but I think the biggest difference is instead that pay-to-play sharing mechanic where you can't open somebody's shot instead of a snap. You can't open somebody's shot until they send one back. So you can't really have a conversation in that way. It's kind of strange, but it's definitely interesting.
Now, if you're watching the video feed, what we're seeing is a video that Ellis Hamburger himself made for The Verge, and it really shows how it's very similar to Snapchat, and appreciate that video. Now, Ellis Hamburger, this whole, what did you call it, pay-to-play, where you basically have to send something in order to see what has been sent to you, sounds to me at first blush like literally the dumbest thing that Facebook has ever done. It just sounds ridiculous. You can see if somebody sends you something and you want to see it and you don't feel like sending something, you know, most of the time people don't feel like sending something before they see what has been sent to them. You take a picture of the ground, or you take a picture of, you know, a blurry something and just send it off, and then they get a blurry something and they don't know what it is. So in order for them to see it, they take a picture of the ground, and then they open it and it's a picture of the ground. I mean, it just sounds like a terrible idea.
Yeah, I think that's one of the problems is the perception. I think the idea is interesting for a few reasons. For one, if they hadn't positioned it, or if it didn't look exactly like Snapchat, maybe people would give it a chance as an alternate news feed. Let's say it's a news feed that you can't unlock unless you post something of your own. That sounds a lot better than a messaging app that you can't use until you send a response back. So I think the mechanic is interesting, but it's not going to work inside of the package that they've packaged it in currently with Slingshot, simply because it feels so much like a messaging app, even though it doesn't want to be.
So Facebook, of course, tried to acquire Snapchat for $3 billion. That didn't go through. If Slingshot fails, do you think Facebook could come back with a higher offer?
Yeah, I think they could. They have a lot of money in the bank, and it's obvious that they want to bet on owning the way that people use the internet, the way that people talk to their friends, the apps they use to talk to their friends. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, at some point, Snapchat's going to need to monetize, and at that point, they're going to have to, make some choices about how they're going to do that, or about how their future is going to be going forward. Because as we all know, as soon as an app ad ads, it starts to lose its cool factor. I know if you look at some of the public's response to ads on Instagram, if you look at the comments of the first Michael Kors Instagram ad, I mean, they're scathing. People hate them, and I feel like that's the problem with the app bubble that we're in today, is that there's this constant cycle of free apps coming out to replace apps that have added advertising, and we're still in it. Snapchat's still ways off, since they just raised a bunch of money to keep building their user base. It's still not a huge user base, even though their users are using it a ton. So I think they still have some time before making that choice. But yeah, sure, I wouldn't be surprised to see another offer on the table.
Now, Dexter in the chat room says that 90% of the pictures will be pictures of genitals, guaranteed. I want to ask you to comment on that. Don't bother commenting on that. Yeah, but you know, Facebook's first attempt to copy the success of Snapchat was an app called Poke. Do you have a sense of why Poke completely failed and why Facebook ended up killing it?
Poke was the most overt Snapchat clone at a time when Snapchat was really gaining popularity, and that was news at the time. When Slingshot clones parts of Snapchat's feature, it's really not a whole lot of a surprise. So I think that the public didn't really want to like Poke, and Poke also didn't offer enough of a value add to get people to switch. I mean, it was very polished, it was cute, it was charming, just like Slingshot for that matter. But there wasn't really a reason to use Poke. And with that said, I'm not sure that they thought that Poke was going to destroy Snapchat, like some of the headlines made it seem. It was built in 10 days. Slingshot was built in 3 months. And I think that's what Facebook is going to start doing more and more, is start playing with these new ideas, see how they can bring an idea like ephemeral messaging to the masses in a Facebook way, in a way that is accessible to people. Because if you look at the stats on Snapchat, almost nobody over 30 is using the app. So who's gonna give them the first taste of ephemeral messaging? Is it Snapchat, or which they may never heard of if they don't have any younger friends or family members, or is it Facebook?
Well, I can't imagine this is going to be the thing that launches the whole Facebook community into the world of ephemeral messaging. It just seems
that's especially since Facebook seems committed to let these apps from Creative Labs, its little skunkworks division. It's determined to let these apps grow on their own. Like with Paper and with Slingshot, they are promoting the apps with the press, which is great because they get to tell a story about how it was made and why it was made and what they're hoping to do with it. But they haven't promoted either app, I don't think, inside of the main Facebook experience on the web or on mobile yet. So maybe they'll do that at some point in the future if they decide that they really need these apps to take off. But at least for now, that doesn't seem to be the idea.
Paper is a beautiful app, and this is a beautiful app too visually. This seems to me like Facebook's version of Google's now defunct 20% time or 15% time, whatever it was, 20% time, where people can launch their own little project, and then the company might get behind it if it's the right kind of project. But again, I don't think this is the right kind of project. Ellis Hamburger, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Explaining this new app from Facebook.
Thanks.
All right, you can find Ellis Hamburger on The Verge, and also the video we showed, you can find that on TheVerge.com as well. And Ellis Hamburger is available on Twitter at Hamburger. Well, Microsoft Ventures is launching an accelerator for startups to develop home automation technologies, and they're doing it in partnership with, drum roll please, an insurance company. Sarah, this is a kind of an odd decision, don't you think? I mean, the American Family Insurance is the name of the company. Is
right, and they're offering a $25,000 equity investment in each startup. It's definitely a unique thing here.
It's unique, but $25,000, what? That'll pay one salary for 3 months? I mean,
right.
This is you know, for Microsoft, this is pocket change. It seems like such a half-hearted venture. I can't help but think that this is a way for Microsoft to make an insurance company, essentially a huge Microsoft customer, feel important, feel like they're part of the tech industry or whatever. It doesn't seem to me to have anything to do with carving out the future of home automation.
I do think that's spot on. I mean, this is based at Microsoft headquarters. It has all the trappings on the outside of seeming very official, but based on what we're hearing about it, it doesn't seem like something Microsoft is very invested in.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft research has been kicking butt with technologies that are perfect for home automation. Bill Gates himself has had a home automation model home, his own personal home in Washington. It's just, you know, for the last 10 years or something like that, has been, you walk around and the music changes according to your taste. It knows who you are, where you are, lights come on by themselves. He's always been a pioneer in home automation. It's kind of pathetic that Microsoft is announcing this particular half-hearted attempt at just sort of using the home automation space for purposes other than really dominating or really achieving its vision for home automation. Microsoft creates some of the most breathtaking videos showing their vision of the future. They did one in 2009. I think they did another one in 2011 that shows how the whole world would work in the future 10, 15 years from now. They need to be spending not tens of thousands of dollars, but you know, tens of billions of dollars over the next few years to really carve out the future of home automation, because it's going to be a gigantic market. Of course, home automation being a subset of the Internet of Things, which is a multi-trillion-dollar industry in just a few years, according to several analysts. So I think that this is kind of a pathetic effort, and it's something that is not to be taken seriously as far as I can tell.
Right, and of course, Microsoft has Cortana, the voice assistant, and we were talking about a smart home and the Internet of Things. It seems like a perfect application for Cortana to help you turn on lights and so on. So it'll be interesting to see when that actually is in place.
So, Sarah, you have some good news for BlackBerry users.
Yes. So starting this fall, when we upgrade to BlackBerry 10.3, BlackBerry users will have access to a slew of apps from the Amazon App Store. So that means Candy Crush, Netflix, Pinterest, and so on. So the main difference here, it's important to point out, is that the App Store, the Amazon App Store, will be preloaded on devices. Currently, BlackBerry users can get access, but they need to have a few more steps in the process. So this just simplifies everything.
Why would Amazon do this, do you think? I mean, they're coming out with their own smartphone today, presumably, that is an Android, is a fork of Android. Why would they be helping BlackBerry in this way, do you think?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we clearly have seen Amazon have its hand in all areas of business. And this is, I think, I'm more clear on how this is a great opportunity for BlackBerry. BlackBerry, obviously, its strengths are enterprise, business-focused software. So it's not going to have to focus on developing apps for its platform. It can get all those apps from Amazon while focusing on its strengths. I don't know. What are your thoughts about the Amazon side of it?
Well, I really don't know. Amazon seems to be really, really good at harming its competitors. And taking away business from its competitors and doing things that its competitors don't want them to do. They're also good at succeeding as a business, although they're not very profitable. They keep margins low to keep prices low and so on. They're famous for that sort of business tactic, but they tend to be really, really good at sort of doing a scorched earth on whatever market they're in for whatever reasons. Presumably it's good business practice. But again, this is a good thing for BlackBerry. They need the help. They need all the help they can get. They're kind of on the ropes, as are everyone who wants to compete against iOS and Android. So, you know, let's just revel in the good news for BlackBerry users. We have a lot of BlackBerry users who tell me all the time, we don't cover BlackBerry enough on this show. And of course, it's such a small part of the market. That's the reason. But this is good news for BlackBerry users. You know, more apps are better apps, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Well, Apple launched a cheap new iMac today, priced at $1,099. That's $200 less than the previous lowest price. The new iMac has a 21.5-inch screen, a 1.4 gigahertz dual-core Intel Core i5 processor, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and 500 gigabytes hard drive. It's probably, if you look at the processor, this is not a great processor. This is probably going to be a limited PC that's going to be kind of slow. It's not going to be as powerful as some of Apple's laptops. So this price is not a great price as far as I can tell. This is a reasonable price for what you get. But still, for people who want an iMac and a really nice screen and don't need a lot of processing power, you know, this is probably good news. $1,000 and change for an iMac. Not bad.
Yeah, I was not allowed to add there. This isn't a rip-off. It's kind of in the middle ground. So not a bad value, but definitely in the middle, not super exciting.
But what is a little bit more exciting, at least for some people with a sense of artistry, is a new product from Adobe. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Adobe is trying its hand at hardware now. It just released a stylus and a ruler. They're respectively called the Ink and the Slide, and they help customers on the go get the most of Adobe's Creative Cloud suite. So to get both of them, it will cost $199. These are iPad only. You'll have access to 3 new apps, including one that's Photoshop Mix, has a lot of the features from the desktop version of the program. So it's really good if you're a designer, if you want access to really well-made, precise tools on the go, and you have an iPad.
Now the ruler is kind of an odd product. I've never seen a ruler for drawing on a tablet before. What do they need a ruler for?
Yeah, so what's interesting about this is that you can select from different libraries of shapes from an Adobe mobile app that will come in handy for lots of different situations. If you're doing interior design mock-ups, if you're planning an app. So it seems like they're really thinking about a lot of different use cases here. It's definitely something that I kind of feel like you need to try out to understand how it works. But at least in theory, it sounds pretty cool. And again, this is Adobe's first hand at hardware. So it's interesting, definitely.
It is interesting. $200 is not cheap. So like so many Adobe products, this is not for amateurs. This is more for professionals. But the apps are free that it supports. And I imagine we'll see more apps, third-party apps supporting this in the future. Kind of cool. I'd like to play with it, but I'm not going to pay $200 for it. That's a lot of money to just try something out and play with it. But, you know, kudos to Adobe for jumping into the hardware business. Everybody's doing it. Microsoft's going big in hardware too. Why not? So we'll see what happens with that. Well, the narrative clip, of course, you've heard about it on this show and other shows on Twit. It's a tiny life logging camera. You attach it to your clothes and it takes pictures every 30 seconds automatically. And the purpose is to give you a literally photographic memory of the random events of your life. Leo's got one. I've seen him wear it here and there. He stopped wearing it after a while. It's a little weird. It's very different, and it's really not that popular. Phillip Pantuso is a Brooklyn-based writer who wore a narrative clip all day, every day for a week, and he wrote about the experience for popular mechanics. Welcome to you, Phillip. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thanks for having me.
Now, of course, as I said, this has been around for a while. It's not a mainstream gadget, probably because people feel it's invasive and unnecessary, but what was your experience?
Yeah, I definitely felt the invasiveness of it from the start. Like you mentioned, I live in New York, and the very first time I wore it out was on the subway, and I was pretty, self-conscious about the fact that I was surreptitiously photographing everyone around me, and they didn't know anything about it. You'd never go up and stick an SLR in someone's face, but at least they would know what you were doing. But over time, I kind of got used to it, and the longer I wore it, the more natural it seemed. And surprisingly, when I talked to people about it, there were fewer issues that they had than I would have expected. So maybe people are just more okay with, or more used to being photographed.
Yeah, you can wear an alligator on your head on the New York subway and people barely look at you. So that's one type of test. Another would be to go to a medium-sized or small town, or wear it to an office, or that sort of thing. So how many pictures did you take during your week, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I took almost 15,000 pictures, so a lot. But thankfully, the clip has an algorithm that sorts and consolidates most of your images. I still ended up with several thousand, many more than I would have ever used. And for the most part, what it captured was ambiance, or just me sitting at my computer, nothing that interesting. And I kind of came to realize that if I weren't just trying it out for this article, I don't think I would wear it nearly as often as I did, because it sells itself on capturing the mundane moments, and therein you'll find, life's true meaning or whatever. But most of what it captured was pretty forgettable.
Yeah.
So what do you think you would do with all these photos? Would it be something that you would share with friends and family, or is it more just to keep to yourself and kind of look back on your day or your week?
It kind of depends. When I would go out with friends or go to parties, or just have spent time with people, then I would share those. And it was kind of fun to go back through and relive those experiences with people. For the most part, though, I found that its main utility was personal. Like, I would go back through and I would just have this sort of flip book of my day, and I became much more aware of my habits and how I was spending my time and routines and just all these kinds of things that you do unthinkingly, or that I do unthinkingly every day. And, you know, by the end of my trial with the clip, I was starting to just vary some of those habits and routines. And that to me was kind of the best result of wearing the clip, is it made me more conscious of my own life and maybe therefore consequently live a more conscious life.
Yeah, it's really an interesting concept, life logging. It's kind of gotten a bad reputation lately because of all the mass surveillance and a lot of privacy concerns and so on. But sort of technology pioneer Gordon Bell has been life logging full-time since early 2000. He works at Microsoft now, but he wears 2 cameras around his neck every day and records everything that happens to him every day, all day. And he's been doing that since well before these kind of consumer-based life logging devices have been around. And I've discovered that as I look back on my own memories of my own family, the trips that I've taken, you tend to remember the moments that were photographed or video, or where you have video. You look at the video and you kind of forget the memories that were never captured with any sort of medium are more likely to fade, and the memories that are captured with photographs are more likely to be retained in your memory. So it literally does boost your memory. I suspect that's one of the biggest benefits to this type of technology. But just to rephrase kind of what I think I heard you saying, it actually does reinforce, and there was some pleasurable quality to going back and remembering things that you might have slipped your mind completely and just, oh yeah, I remember that. That was an amazing sandwich, or whatever your memories are over a period of just 1 week. So can you just very briefly describe the feeling that it gave you looking back at these pictures?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you kind of nailed it. You know, there were certain occasions where I wouldn't have thought that they would have been memorable. But like, for example, one time I just went to Prospect Park with my girlfriend. It was a beautiful day. I took the camera. I very quickly forgot about it. And, you know, we just sat in the park and talked and read and played catch. And I went back through looking at that later, and I felt what I felt when I was actually engaged in those activities. And yeah, I didn't have to think about taking a photo. And I think that the one thing that the narrative clip does really well is that it will just record things, obviously, without you thinking about it. And for the most part, like any sort of data accumulation, there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of meaninglessness, but you sift through it and you find real moments of value. And you don't have to remove yourself from those moments to capture them for later reflection. And I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, it is cool. It's a cost benefit there. And of course, you know, this product is not a new product. It costs $279. The battery's good for about 30 hours. Storage for additional pictures, which you're going to need if you use this thing full time, costs about $9 a month. So it's not a cheap thing either. Phillip Pantuso, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News today and explaining and sharing your experiences using the narrative clip.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much.
All right, you can find Phillip Pantuso at phillippantuso.tumblr.com and also on Twitter at Phillip Pantuso. Well, we're going to wrap up the show in just a sec. But before we go, I want to tell you about Squarespace. If you watch this show, you know that I love Squarespace, and they're one of our sponsors today. I've been using Squarespace for long before I worked at Twit, long before I did this show. I absolutely love Squarespace because it's so easy to build a beautiful website that will never go down. It's the place to build a website on the internet. They have 25 beautiful templates, so you're not designing from scratch, not by a long shot. You're starting with really polished, super beautiful websites, and then you can tweak and modify them using their simple tools. If you need help, they have free 24/7 live chat support or email support, and the people who provide support, I've used a couple of times, I almost never need it because it's so easy to use, but they really know what they're talking about and they get back to you right away. They'll never send you off to some knowledge base or something like that. They'll answer your question with knowledge. And they have another thing that I think is great. It's a logo creator tool. If you're going to have a small business, or even if you have a product or any sort of branding you need to do, and you want to have a logo, you can create a logo very simply using the logo creator tool. And you can check that out at blog.squarespace.com. They have a nice video that shows you how that works. And of course, Squarespace is mobile ready. Very important. Your website will look fantastic. It'll look perfect, in fact, on a mobile device. Even a tiny phone with a tiny screen like an iPhone, it'll look perfect because Squarespace will sort of re-optimize it for that size screen. It'll optimize it for a tablet. It'll optimize it for a gigantic screen. There's no screen that's the wrong size for Squarespace websites because Squarespace is very smart about showing and displaying your website in the proper native format. So start a free 2-week trial with no credit card required and start building your website. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code TNT, and that'll get you 10% off. And it'll also show your support for Tech News Today. And we thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today. And remember that a better web awaits, and it starts with your new Squarespace website. Well, that's the Tech News Today. Sarah Silbert, always glad to have you on. This is your second Wednesday. You're here every Wednesday. And
Indeed.
so it's always great to have your insights and your voice on all these stories. Thank you again.
Yeah, and I look forward to your Amazon coverage today. We'll also be covering that all on Engadget, so check it out.
Yep, check out Engadget.
Interesting
Always
evening.
great coverage. Now, you guys are covering you cover all the major events, but you're covering the Amazon event live. There's going to be a live blog, right?
Yes, we have 2 people there, so definitely expect a live blog from Brad Mullen, so it should be great.
Fantastic. That's engadget.com. And, of course, we'll be covering here as well at 10:15, Leo and me, and possibly some others. So thanks again, Sarah Silbert.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you can subscribe to Tech News Today at twit.tv/TNT and send us an email at tnt@twit.tv. Don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight night. And stick around for our special coverage of the big Amazon launch event. Join Leo and me at 10:15 a.m. Pacific. That's in just a few minutes. Talk to you then. Until then, Mike Elgan signing out. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.